Good evening, and welcome back to the Poe Museum. Tonight I'd like to show you one of my favorite portraits from the museum's collection. Do you recognize her? She's not Poe's mother, she's not Poe's foster mother, she's not Poe's fiance or his wife. She's actually Poe's foster father John Allan's sister, Mary Allan. So she's kind of like a foster aunt to Edgar. And the painting is actually pretty impressive. This is by James Tannock, who was a Scottish artist. He has works in the Scottish National Portrait Gallery. Apparently he was the only portraitist that the poet Robert Burns would sit for. So you can tell this lady has money. Look at her outfit there. But what does this have to do with Edgar Allan Poe besides being his foster father's sister? She lived in Irvine, Scotland. That's actually Irvine in the background right there. And Poe visited her. He was 6 years old. John Allan originally was from Scotland. He'd come to the States to seek his fortune in the New World. But after the War of 1812, the tobacco export business was suffering. So John Allan packed up his wife, his sister-in-law, and little 6-year-old Edgar and took him over to London. But on the way to London, they stopped by Irvine and spent some time at her house. Supposedly, John Allan tried to leave Edgar there, but it didn't work out. Edgar protested. Edgar's foster mother protested, so they got to follow the family on to London. And that's kind of the last contact he had with her, but it was an important time. This was Poe's first time overseas, the first exposure he had to European culture, to castles, to European ghost stories. So the sort of things that would inspire his imagination for decades to come. And he might even have briefly attended a school in Irvine, although I'm not entirely sold on that. Supposedly he made some friends there and they went to class together, but I'm not completely sure that's true. So how this end up here? Well, her grandniece sold this to the Poe Museum back in 1928. And she wrote a letter to the museum that said that this ring on her finger is a magic ring. So whatever you do, be careful of cleaning the painting. You don't want to get rid of that magic ring. She also said the painting was done in 1803. I'm not entirely convinced of that. The outfit, look at those puffy sleeves there. That's not really 1803 fashion, including that nice big hat there. I'm going to say it's probably a couple decades after that, and maybe about a decade after Edgar visited her. And incidentally, Allan relative over in Scotland showed us a portrait that he has of her sister Elizabeth Allan, and she also has a pretty impressive hat on. But you got to admit, it's a fine portrait, and it's a great addition to our collection. It's just a little bit big. So right now it's in storage because it's just so big it doesn't fit into the chronology of the museum. But when we do rearrange the exhibits early next year, this is going back on display out there to sort of help us interpret Poe's time in Europe. That trip to Europe, 5 years when he was a kid, was the only time he actually went abroad. This was his exposure to older cultures, to an older world, and I think it left an indelible imprint on his art, on his writing for the rest of his life. I mean, just look at all his stories that are set in old European abbeys or castles. And I think it goes back to that time he visited her, starting right there in Irvine. So right now, if you visit the Poe Museum, you're probably not going to see this, but this is kind of a sneak preview of what you're going to see next year. So thanks for all your support, Poe patrons, and we'll see you next time at the Poe Museum.